The Courier. Based on a true story, this movie portrays a beautiful friendship struck between a businessman and a Soviet officer. In 1960, a Russian official named Oleg Penkovsky disagreed with his country's ideas about building more nuclear weapons. He decided to share important information with a few American tourists he met in Moscow one evening. He gave them a sealed envelope and asked them to deliver it to the deputy chief of mission at their embassy. 4 months later, at MI6 headquarters in London, a CIA officer named Emily Donovan asked for help to prevent a nuclear war. Based on Oleg's message, she explained that Oleg used to be a soldier during the war and now works in a top scientific position, while secretly working for the Soviet intelligence unit GRU. When MI6 agreed to help the CIA, Emily suggested involving a businessman who often traveled abroad to approach Oleg discreetly. They contacted a salesman named Greville Wynn and arranged a meeting. MI6 officer Dickie Franks and Emily met Greville for lunch the next day, using their fake names, James and Helen. When asked to travel to the Soviet Union for business opportunities, Greville realizes the seriousness of the situation. Emily assures him that his normal job as a salesman makes him a perfect candidate for spying. They ask him to set up a meeting with the State Committee for Scientific Research. After their lunch, Greville is told that secrecy ensures his safety and the task is not immediately dangerous. Emily gives him a tie clip as a subtle signal. Greville tells Sheila about a potential business opportunity in the Soviet Union. In Moscow, Greville arrives and enjoys the city before meeting with the State Committee for Scientific Research. During the meeting, Oleg notices Greville's tie clip and recognizes him. They have lunch together, and Oleg shares about his daughter upon learning about Greville's son. Impressed by Greville's demeanor, Oleg suggests meeting again that evening. Later, Oleg takes Greville to the Bolshoi Theater for a ballet performance, where even the Soviet leader Khrushchev is present. Later, Oleg confides in Greville, sharing his relief at finally having a chance to make a difference. Greville, feeling anxious about the mission, asks about their next moves. Oleg instructs him to go back to London and invite him to visit with a trade delegation. Greville is surprised by the seemingly straightforward nature of the task as Oleg leaves quickly after their conversation. Back in London, Greville excitedly reunites with Emily and Dickie, and when Oleg arrives as planned, Greville takes the group to the West End for a night out. They even celebrate later on with Sheila joining them. After ensuring everyone is safely back at their hotel, Oleg meets with Emily and Dickie as planned. Greville completes his part of the mission and leaves. During their meeting, Oleg reveals that the Soviets are not easing up on their stance, but are actually keen on provoking a confrontation with America, led by Khrushchev. In exchange for his crucial information, Emily assures Oleg that she will help him and his family safely defect whenever necessary. During their meeting, Emily takes notes while the conversation is also recorded. Oleg explains that the Soviet Union lacks the capability for a first strike due to America's superior nuclear arsenal. However, it remains uncertain if this will deter Khrushchev from escalating tensions. As the meeting wraps up for the night, Dickie informs Oleg that Greville's part in the mission is finished. The next day, when they inform Oleg about this, he insists on continuing to work with Greville as a courier, despite not being briefed on the specifics of their operations. They reassure Oleg that Greville will not be in any danger as he carries out his tasks. Despite Greville's reluctance to continue spying due to his family responsibilities, Emily explains that in the event of a nuclear threat from the Soviet Union, civilians will only have a 4-minute evacuation warning. She emphasizes that Greville won't have enough time to reach his family or ensure their safety in standard shelters. Emily offers access to government shelters as an incentive for Greville to reconsider. Although Greville storms off angrily, Emily remains confident that he will eventually agree. Oleg and Greville have dinner together, discussing their shared goal of positive change despite political differences. Greville agrees to help after Oleg assures him of safety as a courier. Oleg explains the possibility of a prisoner exchange for Greville's release if caught, but warns of consequences for both if discovered. Greville learns to be cautious in Russia, where everyone could be an informant. As Greville maintains his facade as a regular businessman in Moscow, Oleg investigates nuclear advancements for further communication. In exchange for his risky work, Greville asks for support for Sheila and Andrew if he gets caught. As tensions rise in the nuclear arms race, Greville's role becomes more crucial. However, to keep her safe, Sheila is left unaware and notices Greville becoming distant and stressed at home. Under constant pressure and scrutiny in Moscow, Greville receives evidence from Oleg about the Soviets' testing of the 50-megaton bomb, nicknamed the King of Bombs. Despite the growing joint efforts of the CIA and MI6, Greville remains vigilant during his frequent trips to Moscow. During a family camping trip, Greville loses his temper with his son over a trivial matter. When Sheila confronts him later, he blames work stress for his behavior. Unconvinced, Sheila discusses her concerns with a friend, questioning if Greville might be involved with someone in Moscow, since he refuses to stop his trips there. In Moscow, Greville meets Oleg's family, and they discuss defection plans. Oleg expresses a desire for his daughter to grow up in a free environment, where she can make her own choices. Oleg discovers the Soviet plan to make Cuba a nuclear threat to the US. Emily reports this to the CIA, who initially doubts her until the director orders further investigation. Oleg provides photographic evidence and military plans to Greville during his next visit. That night, Greville notices signs of a search in his hotel room. The next day, a KGB officer named Gribanov questions Oleg about Greville's activities in Moscow, but Oleg assures him that Greville is only conducting business. Oleg agrees to keep a closer eye on Greville going forward. Returning to London, Greville is withdrawn from the operation by Dickey after reporting the search of his room. He assures Sheila he's done with Moscow business. Meanwhile, the Soviet plan in Cuba worries everyone. Oleg is poisoned and collapses, learning of his wife's pregnancy in the hospital. Greville, concerned about Oleg's absence from the trade delegation, decides to rescue him despite objections. Sheila is disappointed by Greville's return to Moscow, causing tension at home. The next evening in Moscow, Greville and Oleg meet in Greville's hotel room, communicating quietly over a radio to avoid being overheard. Emily, using a new identity, plans a safe escape route for Oleg and his family. When Greville confirms that Oleg is ready to defect, he passes a pack of cigarettes containing Emily's detailed plan to Oleg. They attend a ballet performance together, and later, Oleg reviews the plan in the cigarette pack. The following day, Greville prepares to leave, while Oleg tells his family he will join them after lunch. Emily discusses the possibility of Soviet concessions in Cuba with her superior, as Oleg gets ready to leave his old life behind. The escape plan is put into action, but unbeknownst to them, the KGB were already aware, leading to Emily and her contact being tracked. They narrowly avoid capture, while Oleg drops off Greville at the airport. Greville's flight is delayed with KGB officials on board, while Emily heads towards Oleg's home. However, upon reaching home, Oleg finds the KGB waiting for him, and Emily is also captured outside. Oleg's wife learns about his actions, and Gribanov reveals that they searched his house and installed surveillance. Oleg and Greville are both arrested shortly after. Meanwhile, Emily reaches the American embassy, but is served notice to leave Moscow within 24 hours due to her diplomatic status. Greville faces harsh treatment in prison, while Emily meets with Dickey in London. They inform Sheila of Greville's arrest without specifics, hinting at espionage charges. Emily praises Greville's bravery and assures Sheila of his eventual return once proven innocent. Emily advises Sheila to be cautious, stressing the importance of maintaining Greville's innocence convincingly. Despite tough conditions and offers of better food to confess, Greville remains resolute in proclaiming his innocence to clear his name for his family. Sheila follows Emily's advice when questioned about Greville, denying any possibility of him being a successful spy. In prison, Gribanov tries various tactics to get Greville to confess, including mentioning America's missiles in Turkey and Britain's lack of concern for him. However, Greville maintains his innocence despite harsh treatment. Losing his temper over a missing blanket leads to a brutal beating, but he still refuses to admit to false charges. 6 months later, Sheila visits Greville in prison, sharing that the Russians backed down from Cuba, lifting his spirits. Emily pushes for a prisoner exchange for Greville's release. Despite challenges, including Gribanov's pressure, Greville remains strong. Oleg's confession proves Greville's innocence, bringing a sense of accomplishment and peace. Greville is released in April 1964, in exchange for Soviet spy Conan Malady. He returns home changed, believing in ordinary people's power, after smuggling over 5,000 secret Soviet military documents with Oleg. Sadly, Oleg, the West's most valuable Soviet source, is executed for treason and buried in an unmarked grave. However, his family is allowed to remain in Moscow. If you enjoyed this movie, leave a like and subscribe to our channel for movies such movies.